Spanglish Sports World on the Single TV channel 250, Spanglish World Network. And I just want to remind you again to please download the application of Single TV on both the iOS and Android stores. The application is completely free, so you don't have any reason why not to download it. Enjoy it. Remember, after you have spent a couple of times using the application and watching our programming, please do go back to the store and leave us a comment and a rating, how the application is working, what shows you would like to see that you are not seeing yet. And remember as well that Single TV can be found on Amazon Fire and Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and Google Chromecast, as well as in all TVs 2016 forward. With us today is going to be a great show. We are going to introduce to you a new member of the Spanglish World family. His name is Hayden Cowie, and he is going to tell us what the show is going to be all about. As well, I have, as you can see, the host, the current host of the acclaimed show, The Champions Corner, here on Spanglish World Network, Stephanie Fleming, who also, for somewhat recently, they are telling me, someone told me that she's going to be co-hosting with Hayden as well. So, Stephanie, Hayden, welcome to Spanglish Sport World. You are at home. How are you guys doing?
I'm excellent. Super good to be on with you, Eduardo. It's always a pleasure.
Hayden,
how are you doing today, Hayden?
Hold on. I'm having some audio difficulties here. Can you guys hear me?
That's okay. Yes, it's all a part of it. We all get to work out the kinks before
there you are.
Our show launches, which is great.
How are you guys?
How are you doing, Hayden? How is the wonderful city of Houston, Texas doing?
Gorgeous today. Gorgeous. That's why I'm coming to you from outdoors. After our big freeze.
So you have just joined the family here at Spanglish World and Spanglish Sports World. Now, we want to hear the big news. What is this show about? What is it going to, who are you going to bring to the picture? We want to know a name.
Well, I am a former semi-pro fighter, and martial arts is my passion. And I'm really excited about this opportunity to bring my brand of sports knowledge and interpretation to Spanglish Sports World. I intend, the program that I've set up, I have guests that I'd like to line up for the show, former fighters, referees, officials, people of that nature, to give perspective on what it's like from the inside of the sport, as well as maybe give some fight analysis on upcoming fights and evaluate past fights as well. I'd like to call the show, here it comes, The Final Round.
Amazing, amazing. So, the final round will be coming on. Stay tuned to see what date we have. Hayden is chosen for this show, and definitely we are looking forward to seeing it every single week, maybe twice a week if we can work it out. But so let's start looking at your expertise, because we know that you are a coach as well as a sparring partner in some cases. But I want to touch on a story from last week that shocked the boxing world, and of the wonderful Marvin Hagler. And where were you when you heard the news, Hayden?
I was actually in the boxing gym, and one of fighters that I used to work with. I don't know if you know, he actually won, I think, a South American title. His name was Raul Frank. Raul Frank was the one who called me and told me that Marvelous Marvin Hagler had passed away. Devastating for the community. He was only 66 years old. And, you know, I'm just grateful. One of the great inspirations, especially being a southpaw, for my fighting mentality and attitude in and out of the ring.
Yeah,
Definitely.
to me, it was a great loss. I had the chance of interviewing him and seeing a lot of his fights, and it's just incredible to think that we have lost so many greats this year, and nothing to account for it. No one can say what happened, what they in the prime of their life, technically.
Yeah. You know, it was really interesting to see the development of Marvelous Marvin Hagler over the years. His life was marked with so much controversy. When he fought for his first title fight and got a draw with Vito Antuofermo, and then later on when he finally won a title after 50 fights over a 7-year period. Many boxing careers don't even last that long. You know, there was a struggle for him to be able to get the announcers and pundits and journalists to address him by his ring name. He wanted that persona of Marvelous Marvin Hagler. A lot of people don't even know that that was his actual name. He had his name legally changed to Marvelous Marvin Hagler so that they would have to call him Marvelous.
So Seth,
Eduardo, I had no idea that you interviewed him.
yeah,
That's amazing.
Yeah,
What
that
an
is.
honor.
That is.
I had the chance to do it a couple of times when he competed for WBA title and then for WBC title. The last interview was actually, I think it was about 5 years ago, for his 60th birthday. So
Wow. Eduardo, can I pick your brain and ask you if you remember anything that you guys talked about?
definitely, well, the last time I spoke with him, actually, I wanted to hear his views now that he had kind of stepped away from the ring and just
Yes.
look at his greatest fights and his greatest memories. Look, they were all great because I am great. So uh, he was. If I have to remember, I think one of the greatest moments wasn't not in my professional career, but it was training as an amateur when I was going I went out for the U.S. Olympic team, and he told me clearly, look, there is nothing better than an athlete can do than to represent his country and represent it in a great way. And he told me that at that time when he remembers a young Sugar Ray Leonard uh, entering the ring who tried to make the team as well. So it was amazing to think that you had here this great guy. Sugar Ray was just coming down the aisle. So the antidotes from him are so many. It's incredible.
Yeah, Eduardo, I don't know if you know, but yesterday Hayden and myself were a part of a group actually that was in memoriam of the marvelous Marvin Hagler. And we actually watched the Sugar Ray fight together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was really cool to rewatch his old fights. It had been a long time since I seen him. So yeah, it was really cool. Hey, Hayden.
It was great. It was really nice to come together with all of these people from all over the world, literally, and all communities. We had Mauricio Suleiman from the WBC there. We had Frezo Kendo, the most decorated Latino heavyweight ever. We had several fighters pop through, just popping in to say hello, Chris Bird, people like that. And just numerous fight analysts and boxing, sports psychologists, people just coming in to pay their respects and listen to and learn about the life of such a great athlete and such a great individual.
So now let's drift into the reality of what the ring is bringing us, because scheduled for possibly August, we probably will have the biggest rematch of an Olympic event in the fight between Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. And let's remember, Lennox Lewis was the first defeat of Mike Tyson ever in his amateur career. Tyson got the silver medal, and Lennox Lewis won the gold. So now that we have both, we'll start with Stephanie for now. Steph, what do you think is going to happen? The Canadian against the American, the battle of the greats.
Well, obviously, I'm super excited. I'm a huge fan of Mike Tyson's, and I was honestly a little skeptical to have him come back at such a late age and get in the ring. Nobody wants to see someone that they've idolized and look up to not look like themselves, doing what they love to do for so many years. But I thought they were both in amazing shape. They were really well conditioned, and they put on an entertaining bout. I know a lot of the public complained that it wasn't, a knockout type fight, but regardless, I thought it was entertaining for anyone who really truly enjoys boxing and could break it down and watch it. And I'm excited to see this one. I think because Mike Tyson is just coming off a training camp and he's sort of like wanting to pick up the steam, and I'm sure like financially gain some influence, that I think he's probably going to take it. But again, it's an exhibition bout, so it's not going to be a knockout. There's not going to be any, dirty fighting or anything like that, but it's going to be good for the purist type boxing who enjoy truly watching the sports and want to see some people that they've idolized get back in the ring again.
Any prediction there?
Oh yeah, Tyson all the way. I think he's got this.
Yeah.
Well, and you said no knockout, but at the end of the day, Lennox might not go for a knockout, but you never know how hard he might hit. So it might be a knockout anyways.
But Eduardo, I know you said Lennox Lewis, but I thought the media was saying Holyfield.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Lennox Lewis was just a rumor, and Holyfield was the actual signed contract.
Yeah, so that's what I heard. I know they had thrown Lennox Lewis's name in there even before they threw Roy Jones's name in there for the first bout. But I think that they may actually have settled on Evander Holyfield, which is still every bit as intriguing.
Yeah, for sure. And still my prediction is the same. I still see Tyson taking that fight just because he is coming off hardcore training camp. And he is looking like he's trying to get that financial momentum again, and he's training hard. He's looking good. He's got the conditioning. He's got the cardio. So yeah, I still honestly think that Tyson has this bout against Holyfield. Maybe Lennox Lewis is in the future, though. You never know. The rumors are definitely out there and circulating.
Well, let's talk Evander Holyfield. I think that's going to be a fight for the third fight of the century, as they say. First was the year, then was the rematch, and now this will be the determination point of that legacy.
Yeah, for
Evander,
sure.
let's Evander has been in the ring, although not fighting professionally, been on the ring, sparring with his son, who has an
Evan.
amazing record. Has an amazing. I I con- I think Evan is even better than his father, but that's a different story altogether. Uh, but where do you think is going to go? Hayden? Because Evander is not an easy a chump to just throw around. That you're going to beat him.
Hey, so Eduardo, do you think that I know Evander's fought on, and first of all, I'll start with he had an extensive amateur career, as Mike didn't have, and then had fought a level of opposition through the years that Mike had not. I struggled to find two or three marquee named fighters that Mike Tyson beat in their prime, in their respective primes, to be considered an undisputed world champion. Evander fought seems like everyone when you look at his resume. Coming up from light heavyweight to cruiserweight to heavyweight, and then fighting just monster guys. You know, Riddick Bowe, that trilogy with Riddick Bowe, and eventually Lennox Lewis and people like that. I wonder if we're not at a point where Evander has had just too much shop wear and mileage on his body. And Mike Tyson, who had several time for hiatus, might come in being the fresher of the two octogenarians.
But it's still going to. What I think, yeah, you might be right in regards to the wear and tear on the body, but that's what makes you a knowledgeable fighter. And let's remember, Mike Tyson is a pure hitter more than a smart fighter.
Correct.
And Evander has that reach that Mike doesn't have, even with his age.
He can't resist a fight on the inside. He can't resist going to war.
That's right. You have the height advantage as well, which probably will favor this time more than ever Evander. And let's put it this way: Evander has a record that no one can challenge. Mike beat all the big names along the way, and he was very surprised when he got beat in Japan in 21.
I mean, you would be.
You know, say what they might about what happened in Japan. He didn't train properly. He was distracted. Buster Douglas came for the fight of his life. He was bigger than Mike.
And he gave it.
Stronger than Mike, and powerful enough and durable enough to be able to take what Mike had to dish out, even early on. He got dropped, he got up and pulled it together. A punch that would have probably leveled most of those guys. And was able to hold it together and take Mike out fairly late. So when people talk about the fact that he wasn't in that kind of condition, he wasn't exactly out of shape either. I think there was enough of Mike there in that fight to show that he was beatable at the time. And like I said, I struggle to find the level of opposition that would parallel or come close to the kind of fighters that Evander Holyfield fought from start. And lest we forget that Evander and Mike were sparring partners when Evander was just a light heavyweight and still held his own.
Oh, for sure.
That's a great point, Hayden. That's a great point.
So let's look at the other wonderful fight that has just been announced, and that's Garrica against Tyson Fury. It's going to be a dandy.
It's going to be entertaining for sure.
Where do you think the advantage goes to?
Say again?
Where do you think that the advantage, who has the advantage? Because Tyson Fury is Tyson Fury, but Garrica is no slouch.
No. you're talking about the Tyson Fury AJ fight, yeah?
Yeah.
Tyson Fury is light years ahead of anyone in the division in terms of his boxing IQ and just his abilities. So putting the IQ together with the actual abilities, the actual skill set, he's going to be really difficult to handle for anyone, as we saw with Deontay Wilder. I think AJ is a natural athlete, and I think that's the best attribute he has going for him, is that he's just a natural athlete. On top of that, you add that he's classically fundamentally trained. And I think that's great for the heavyweight division, but I think he lacks the artistic capabilities of Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury can see AJ thinking about the punches he wants to throw and logically fighting his way through these angles, to the angles, through the angles, when Tyson Fury doesn't necessarily use logic so much as he does art. So I think it's going to be a tough night for AJ. If a focused Tyson Fury comes in, he can win this fight. If there are lapses, he can get to Tyson Fury. Does he have the power to put him away? That's the question.
So I want to go back because that 2 weeks ago marked the 50-year anniversary of one of the greatest fights in history of boxing, and that's the fight between Muhammad Ali and Frazier. It was a phenomenal fight. I think there hasn't been a fight that well and precise in a long time.
Yeah, Hayden, what do you think?
I'm having a little bit of trouble. So we're talking about the fight that happened. It was a 50-year anniversary of which fight?
Frazier Muhammad Ali.
Oh. Has it been 50 years?
Yeah, 50 years.
It's remarkable when you think about, again, I'm going to draw a parallel here before launching into it. Ali won Olympic gold at 175 pounds at light heavyweight, back when there was no cruiserweight division to transition into heavyweights. So when he fought guys like Sonny Liston and he got in the ring with these big monster Cleveland Williams types and just dense power punching guys like Joe Frazier, George Foreman, you have to look at it and unquestionably these just some positively Jurassic looking fighters that he stepped up to fight. You have to call him the greatest of all time in that respect. Credit to Frazier for being such a beast. What they did in 15 rounds is remarkable. And looking at the athletes that we have today, how much bigger the heavyweights have evolved into, I still don't think the athletes that they are today could survive that era of 15-round fights at the pace that these guys set. So that was a phenomenal fight. Looking at the adversity Ali faced with broken jaw, things like that. My gosh, where do we find fighters like that now?
I mean, his mentality was also a weapon. It was sharpened. His confidence was like no other in the game. And I think that it was a part of what set him apart for sure.
So if you put together Evander Holyfield's track record against Muhammad Ali's, who would you consider? How would you, if you had to put them at their prime, each of those fighters?
Prime?
Yeah.
Prime for prime, I'm still going with Muhammad Ali. If you brought him into the modern era, which Evander Holyfield has kind of transitioned into, he may not be in the latest crop of fighters. We look at a lot of differences. We change the materials we use in the ring. Turnbuckles are tighter. The sprungwood flooring, much springier for a guy that likes to box like that. The glove material, we don't necessarily always use stuff with horsehair. We have neoprene, compressed EVA. So there's more protection there. And just the technology of training. I think athlete for athlete, I have to go with Ali. I think he was naturally faster, naturally more intelligent a fighter. His ring IQ was second to none. He knew the strategy for each fighter, figured them out. Whereas Evander Holyfield, overall as an athlete, is almost on that level to me. I remember in the 1990s when he hired Lee Haney, I think it was a 6 or 7-time world Mr. Olympia, bodybuilding champion, to help him sculpt this body into the Adonis he became, to do what he did. But oftentimes you would see that Evander Holyfield had a seek and destroy mentality and chose to meet his opponents head on. And I think he was more durable than Ali in that respect. I think Ali picked the right strategies to fight because he knew what his abilities were. And they were about using his speed and prowess and intellect versus his durability. Although he did prove fairly durable against George Foreman.
3 times against Foreman, Ali. So we have to give him some kind of an award to be able to take George Foreman 3 times and still come on top.
Yeah. Foreman needs some sort of legacy award.
Yeah.
Generationally, that guy's been in so many eras of the sport and so significant on such a significant level. When he fought Evander Holyfield, when he fought Michael Moore, when he fought Tommy Morrison, those were significant accomplishments at such a late stage in his career.
And the interesting part is that he took his fights all the way to the end. It wasn't a decisive. And in some of the fights, especially the one with Evander Holyfield, I think the scoring wasn't that accurate because the shot that Foreman managed to take from Evander, I will give him the fight.
Yeah. No, he proved in the more modern era why he should have been so respected back then. And you take that back and you go to the era where he did fight Ali. You look at the war, you're talking about Ali Frazier, and you look at the war those two fought. What Foreman did to Frazier in 2 rounds. I mean, what an animal. Who could stand up to that? And we consider Joe Frazier one of the greatest heavyweights of all times, typically.
Yes. Hayden, weren't we talking to Joe Frazier's daughter the other day?
We were
That was actually so cool, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely. We got in Eduardo the other day, myself and Hayden and a few other people in the group were talking a lot about when boxers retire and how their mental health is often affected because their identity is so connected to who they were as a professional fighter. So we got a lot into that. Hayden, did you want to talk about that a little bit? I think that's such a great topic and it needs to be spoken about a lot more.
Yeah, oftentimes many of the fighters that we meet, I mean, they come from all walks of life, but typically we find a lot of them, the only school they've been to is the school of hard knocks. The only real sciences they've ever studied was the sweet science. So when you take into consideration what they've invested themselves in, their entire adult lives, sometimes their entire childhood as well, when they leave the ring and people no longer know who they are and they no longer have that purpose, where do they go? What do they do? Many of them have never been on the instructional side, so they may know how to fight, but they don't know how to teach. They're not versed in articulating their style or the fundamentals other than through their hands. Their expression is in the ring, so it becomes very difficult for these guys. They, golf just won't do for many of them. So yeah, many of these fighters struggle with identity outside of the ring, acclimation to society, and experience severe depression and other forms of mental illnesses.
I mean, we know what Ali went through. In Canada, we have George Chuvalo, who has been one of the greatest of all time in Canadian boxing history. And Chuvalo really hasn't been. Chuvalo wasn't the same since probably 1990s. He has been slowly digressing in his mental health. The other day, I had the pleasure of speaking with his son about his dad, and he said, "Look, I wish I could take care of him, but I have to have him in a place where they are experts at dementia, because that's how bad it is.
Yes.
Because all the hard knocks that he got in the ring, he's now completely out of touch with reality."
Well, Eduardo, that's another topic that really truly needs to have more lights shed on it, and that is concussions, mild traumatic brain injuries, how they're related to the sport of boxing. Yes, and the after effects, the studies done into how that correlates with things like Alzheimer's, and I think that would be another great topic. I'm sure Hayden could definitely speak of, and I know I would love to speak on as well. Those are the kind of issues that really need to be put into the public eye more. I think it's great that fighters like Fury are doing media. I mean, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast speaking about mental illness that he suffered, speaking about depression and anxiety, and more men coming forward. Big tough guys, big athletes, and people that don't necessarily associate that with vulnerability. When they show that vulnerability, I think it really helps other people come forward, seek help, and it really it helps to normalize mental illness. I say it all the time. You would never not go to the doctor for a broken arm. I mean, why would you not seek help for things like depression, anxiety? And I think shedding a light on those issues is very important.
So, looking more at what you are going to bring, Hayden, to the show, what kind of themes can we expect along the way as time progresses?
I think we're going to bring some hard-hitting topics. We'll get inside of the lives of current, past, present fighters, future and upcoming fighters, prospects. I think we'll talk about subjects such as mental health and the technology behind the sport, the evolution of the sport of boxing. I'm looking forward to really delving into these kind of topics and just the progression of boxing around the world. What's happening? What upcoming fights are being demanded by the fans, the general public, and where we should be going.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that is less notable now than it was prior is the amateur boxing scene.
Yes.
Amateur boxing has completely diluted itself. There are not as many young people going in to learn the craft. They tend to go towards new era of sports like MMA, Muay Thai. They think the martial arts tend to be more friendly in a sense than the game of boxing. What do you think are the steps to get boxing back to the reality of what boxing was back in the 70s, the 80s?
So I don't know that we can ever go back to what boxing was during the 80s for a number of reasons. Back in the 80s, we didn't have so many organizations and titles to hide behind. We didn't have social media. We had us. We had people. We had word of mouth. We had people investing in one champion per division, typically, not 3 or 4 guys running around calling themselves world titleists and not fighting each other anytime soon. So that part, I think we're going to have to accept. However, I think programs like these serve to educate the boxing public. And when we start looking at how attractive mixed martial arts has become, I think oftentimes it's because we don't have enough education. When you do educate the public and you do educate the general fan, they will understand that most of the top level fighters in MMA are immersed in a pure martial art, a rudimentary start, and invested themselves in a pure martial art. Boxing is a pure martial art. Been around since the beginning of fighting, right? Muay Thai has been around for how long? Jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but actual jiu-jitsu before Brazilian jiu-jitsu created that art, helped create that art. Judo, wrestling, all of these are pure. Mixed martial arts is exactly that, mixed. A lot of these guys are getting started and they haven't immersed themselves anywhere that is super significant. If you take someone 2 years in boxing, they're barely ready to spar. 2 years in Muay Thai, they're barely ready to really spar, let alone fight, right? But in MMA, you're seeing that constantly where people are, after about 2 to 3 years, they're in professional fights and they've started a professional fighting career. There isn't a huge amateur scene for MMA. So what are we looking at that point when they level their guns, their respective guns at boxing and say, oh, this is better than boxing. Boxers don't have a chance. Education will show them that the typical MMA stylist, if you extrapolate their striking technique and find out how much time they spent in actual boxing over just a 2-year span, maybe it adds up collectively to 2, 3, 4 months of training time. And is that even with an actual boxing instructor, or is that with someone holding the mitts with typical MMA styled striking technique? So, you know, it's our job as martial artists, as pugilistic specialists, to examine this and convey this information in programs like these.
100%. And Eduardo, you definitely hit a hot topic when you brought this one up. I think myself and Hayden were a part of our boxing club speaking about this and arguing this point for something like 6 hours the other night. And really, you know, when it all comes down to it, I think at the end of the day, most people in the room agreed that to excel at one martial arts first is ultimately how you become the best mixed martial artist. But if you take a wrestler and you put him in a boxing match against a boxer, to say that you think that they're on the same level is laughable. And when it comes to things like striking accuracy, significant blows landed, these types of things, like there is really truly no comparison with a boxer and something like a wrestler who did boxing for a year versus someone who excelled on the Olympic or the national level, even in boxing. There's really no comparison. And that would be another great subject that I know myself and Hayden would be very passionate about talking on the show. So if you're interested in all these kinds of things, definitely that's something that you should tune into. Hayden, what's the name of the show? Just once again for the viewers.
Final round.
The final round. Ding, ding, ding. We want a bell at the end. That would be so cool.
We'll give you the bell. We'll give you the whistle.
So, you know, it's funny that you brought that up, Eduardo. We did have a great discussion, and we already have some basis for this. Actually, one of the most significant matchups in that arena ever has been, I think, arguably Floyd Mayweather Jr. against Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor, who was considered to be one of the best strikers in MMA, had immersed himself for over a year in boxing and got in the ring with Floyd Mayweather Jr. In an actual, it's counted as a professional fight. And I think what we saw was Floyd carrying this fight, maybe to quantify the amount of money people were spending to watch it.
Yes.
And then when he finally decided to do anything, McGregor folded. We saw this again with a good striker coming into it was all MMA. Conor McGregor fought H.E.R a few months ago, and it was the striking prowess of H.E.R, the boxing ability of H.E.R that made the difference against the guy who was considered to be the better boxer. And that's essentially what started the demise in the ring to end it for McGregor. So there's a fundamental basis for this argument to be made. And one of the things, speaking of fundamentals, that I teach when I teach martial arts is any martial art that you can find. I don't care if it's fencing, if it's capoeira, if it's boxing. Typically, the fundamental principles are the same. So it becomes the practitioner. The onus is on the practitioner to adapt that fighting style and accessorize it with the other things. So boxing can be adaptable. We've seen boxing be adaptable in many arenas. We've seen Taekwondo. We've seen Muay Thai. They're all very, very adaptable on the same principles. Circles are typically defense, offense, and offense is typically linear and angular.
Yes.
And they all use the same basic principles.
Yes.
So one of the things that, and you brought an excellent topic in the fighters that try to compete with other ring. We had fighters, boxers, and we'll bring Ali to the picture because Ali tried to fight back then WWE heavyweight champion Hulk Hogan, and that didn't pan out too well. He wasn't as light as a bee as Ali claimed to be. But you think that mixing and matching works well, or is just a distraction more than it helps?
Yeah, it definitely works well to bring in the entertainment factor. I tend to, I've recently started immersing myself in the bare knuckle boxing arena. And I find it to be back to the rudimentary element of boxing. And it's funny, we talk about boxing being in a ring. A ring typically is a circular object, but here it is a square. Well, that's because boxing was originally in a ring, right? And we've spoken about that. So here we've changed the geometry of the situation, and boxers are trained to utilize the geometry of the arena that they're fighting in more so than anyone else because they've had both. When we go to bare knuckle boxing, we see that it's a huge circle that they're in, and you see boxing being adaptable in so many ways. These guys are coming in low, they're coming in high, overhand shots, big looping hooks, things like that. Now, if you apply that to MMA, an octagon, which is closer to being a circle than it is to a square, you get to see with these very low, almost kneeling uppercuts at times that if somebody got down to shoot in to take out the legs of a boxer, they may be running into an uppercut or a low sweeping hook, or a combination of the two. So it is very intriguing. These things are, these sports are evolving and de-evolving enough at the same time to meet in the middle and make for some very interesting times in the martial arts world.
Well,
Definitely.
I want to thank you both. Time has flown. It's amazing. You never realize how fast time flies. But I want to thank you both, Hayden and Stephanie. We look forward As you heard it here first, the final round is now part of Spanglish World, and we look forward to starting this new. You will get to see the fundamentals and learn about the different areas of in-ring challenges. So we welcome you, Hayden, to our family, and just want to remind everybody that this show can be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network and its affiliates in social media. As well, remember that you can go to our website, SpanglishWorld.ca, for all the news, where you will have told by the host of our shows and other columnists of renowned names. Please remember Spanglish Sports World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, but especially
Live it.
because Spanglish Sports World is sport, and sport is Spanglish Sports World. I I want to thank you for being on the show and remind everybody, please stay at home, please stay safe during these COVID times of the pandemic.